Morning, everybody. I hope you had a great weekend. I'm Leanne and I attend Parkhead Nazarene with my husband Wayne and our 3 kids. I don't know about you, but I've just loved doing Pete Greig's prayer course. I love watching all the videos and especially last week's session on contemplative prayer. I really needed to hear that. So this week our devotionals are turning to the topic of listening to God in prayer. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my personal experience with this. So how do we hear God speak to us? How do we take the time to listen to him? How do we know it's him when he speaks? I must say that the times when I try really hard to listen to what God has to say to me, which is usually when I've prayed to God, given him my concerns, my worries, my prayer requests for other people, and then left room at the end of my prayer to listen out for God. I've tried to wait in silence, but my patience quickly wears thin and I become distracted. And then I remember that I'm supposed to be tuning into God. And then I feel guilty and inadequate for being so rubbish at listening to God. I've even tried using pieces of scripture by saying what Samuel said, "Lord, your servant is listening," or "I'm here, God," and saying this repeatedly. And in those times, I didn't hear anything that was distinctly from God. On reflection, when I look back at the times when God has spoken to me in a really profound way, it's the times when I really needed him the most. It was the time when I was pregnant with Ash and we were really worried about how we were going to cope with 3 kids. It was one night I was putting my little girl to bed and I was sitting quietly beside her cot. I had this sudden sense of peace, and then a familiar voice, which I believe was God, told me not to worry. He said that Ash would be our peace baby and that was going to bring healing to people. I had the best pregnancy ever after that. It was the time when we were buying our first house and we anxiously had to watch people coming to view it as we lived right across the road from it. I remember praying and God gave me a verse in the Bible. And when I looked it up, it was a verse saying to be merry and celebrate. I then knew the house was ours. And then there was a time when I was so close to giving up on something that I'm really passionate about. And God told me through another Christian to put on my whole armour of God, which was falling off, and keep going. Pete Greig in his book How to Pray, when he talks about listening to God, refers to Luke chapter 2 verse 19, which goes like this. Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. I can really relate to this because the reason that I remember these times so clearly is the amount of time that I've dwelled in them and replayed them over and over again in my head. I must admit I have a bit of an inner critic in me, and Wayne, my husband, would tell you that I'm really hard on myself and I don't really cut myself some slack. I mentioned earlier that I have 3 kids. I work part-time and I'm also close to finishing a master's just now. So as you can imagine, there are days where I just feel exhausted and overwhelmed. On a really bad day for me, I get the same negative thought that I'm not a true follower of Christ. I actually had a week like that quite recently, where I was getting all those self-condemning thoughts, and I reached out to a wise Christian who knows what I can be like. And she said, "Leanne, I think you think that God is this big, stern figure that places unreasonable expectations in us." And she reminded me of Matthew 11, verse 28 to 30, which talks about how we can take a real rest. In the passage, Jesus invites us to walk with him, watch how he does things, and to work with him. He goes on to assure us that he will not lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on us. When I came off the phone that day, previously feeling really distressed and confused, I sat back down on the couch and the words, "See, beloved," instantly came into my mind. It was undoubtedly our good Lord. Paul tells us in Romans 8 that there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And David tells us in Psalm 8 that we have been made a little lower than the angels and that God thinks so much of us. How amazing is that? If, like me, you can be a little harsh and self-critical, and you feel like you're not doing life very well, I hope you take comfort from this. God has given us an A+, regardless of how well we think we are doing. This was what this Christian told me recently. I've been thinking about it ever since. I pray that you listen, receive this for yourself, and be blessed. Amen.